couldn't look at myself. And this is where I bring back my comparison image to my twin brother, who is healthy, who's, toned, who looks well, where there's me with a patchy haircut, where I'm bald in areas, I look tired, I've gained weight, I have to buy a completely new wardrobe of clothes because I can't fit in the ones that I'm currently wearing. I'm not working anymore because my job had to let me go, because I couldn't physically work there. And I just felt like I lost every ounce of my identity. Every single thing that made me me was just gone. Hi, I'm called Ben, and I've just moved to Manchester very, very recently. And I was diagnosed with a grade 3 brain tumor at the end of 2023. And it officially was called a glioma. It's been naturally very life-changing. I think that when you go through anything like this, it completely alters everything that you've ever done in your life, and you become a completely new person. I would say the two things that I've gotten out of this is I have seen how much I can get pushed and see how much I can actually take strength-wise. But it has also taught me the value of life. I'm 25 years old, and I think when you're that young, you can take it for granted. So I feel like it has taught me about mortality and how grateful you've got to be for it. When I was 18 years old, it was actually my birthday when it was happening, and it was just me and my brother. We were just outside having a drink, and suddenly I'm experiencing these like flashing lights in my eyes, and it was just a sensation I've never felt like before. But it was a really sunny day. It was in July, so I just thought maybe it was that. And then they just kept on flashing, flashing, flashing. And I even put my sunglasses on, and I could feel my body getting really overwhelmed and very panicky. Because I've never experienced a seizure before. This was like my first ever one, and it was a grand mal seizure. And I ended up, talking to my brother, going, I think I need to go inside. I don't feel right. I feel like I'm going to faint. And I just the last thing that I remember was just getting through the patio door to then waking up with, three paramedics over me taking off my clothes. I was sweating. I just was really confused. I just didn't know what I was experiencing. And then through my brother's sort of story and what he saw, I just started seizing up. Thankfully, I fell into the fetal position, so I was already, in a good place if I needed to be resuscitated. But I remember I bit into my mouth, so there was like blood, and well, for my brother, it was more traumatic than it was for me. But when it came down to researching what that was and why I had it, I was taken to my local hospital, and being in a very small town at that point, all my doctors told me everyone is allowed to have at least one seizure in their life without any investigation. Now learning that was not true practice, and that's not what he should have done. Like, regardless, if someone has a seizure, they need to investigate that. The most they said is that I had low phosphate levels. I don't really know too much about that, but they just said that's what caused it. And then 4 years later, it was probably the end of 2022. I was just at work, and before all of that, I felt completely fine after my seizure for that many years. And then suddenly, I'm just sat at work talking to a colleague. And I just the way to describe the sensation, I just had this, it almost felt like I was being electrocuted. It just hit me. And my heartbeat got really, really quick. But the biggest thing that I ended up gaining was lack of speech. It was almost like my ability to talk and my brain just disconnected. And I felt so panicked because it was like people are asking me how I was or how I'm feeling or what's going on, and not being able to verbally describe that. It was just terrifying. I felt so trapped in my own body. And with that, it also made me feel a little bit confused as well, but I was aware that I was confused. And I knew something was wrong at that point, but I guess I was trying to believe that that was just the case. I didn't want to believe it was anything more than that or anything more serious. Um, so, at this point, we were sort of hitting into 2023 now, and I hadn't had an episode like that for a good like 2, 3 months. And I was with my ex at the time, and we were in New York, and I was just walking around, just having general conversation with him, and suddenly it hits me again. But this time, I'm literally floored by it. So I ended up going to the doctors, and first doctor I see, anxiety. And then when it hit around mid 2023, around July, um, they started for which originally being monthly, they went into weekly episodes of these sort of like attacks that were happening where I couldn't speak. I was very breathless and very confused. And I probably saw around 3 different doctors, with second opinions, different practices, just to sort of see what people are thinking. And every single one of them said, you've got anxiety, you've got anxiety, you've got anxiety. We went out to this like big dinner party with his work friends of some kind, and I remember drinking a lot that night, and I definitely didn't feel myself. I felt, I just thought maybe I was getting a cold or I was feeling a bit unwell. Um, but that evening, so I was due to work the next day, I get woken up, and I just woke up in sweats, and he just tells me, you just had a seizure, and I'm going to take you to the hospital. We need to get you looked at. And at this point, I was extremely confused. I I didn't really know where I was, who I was with. Like it was, it was exactly how it was when I was 18, but at the age of 24, this is when it happened. And I got taken right into hospital, and they said, okay, we need to do an MRI on you. And that's when I had found out that I had, at this point, they just said 2 lesions on the brain. One on the back of my brain is it's a malformation. It's called an AVM, which is like swollen blood vessels that's slightly twisted. That's on the back, but they didn't tell me what the other one was. So I'm sort of, out of there, and I'm just thinking, oh, cancer, that's a weird thing to sort of throw at me. They say, oh, thankfully it's benign. It's a benign tumor. So we will get you to meet your surgeon, and we'll go from there. And so obviously I'm ecstatic that it's not a cancerous tumor. It's something that can just be removed and it won't grow back. And that's kind of where my head was at. And sort of a month later, around February of 2024, I meet my one of my consultants who would perform the surgery in the neuro department. And I didn't even get my coat off before he said, "Oh, so it's a grade 2 tumor." And I'm like, "Huh?" And that's when he was like, "No, yeah, so it is malignant, but where it's at now is that, we can't operate on it, and the type of tumor you have." So the actual long version is like a oligodendroglioma, and he said to me, from the look of the scan, it's probably been in my brain for about 9, 10 years. So that's how long it's taken to grow to get. I think it's the size of 3 centimeters by like 2.5 centimeters. And then he arranged me to have my surgery about a month later. I just woke up, and the first thing I said was, did I have a seizure? Did I have a seizure? Am I going to be okay? Like, did I? And they were like, no, 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 you haven't had a seizure. You're fine. Um, and this is where I just was looking around, and I had needles everywhere, all down my body, in my hands. And this is where they could see I think they're like the electrodes of your body, like from your brain going up and down. So they could sort of see, if they do touch the tumor, which bits are more sensitive or some that are not. And my job while I was in there was to work with my physical and speech therapist. So it was almost like an English lesson where you would do like vowels and pictures and stories, and you'd have to really focus. Um, but around me, I could see everything very, very clearly, and it fascinated me in a weird way. I think most people seeing blood and gore and whatever else would terrify them. For me, I was very, yeah, as I say, very fascinated to see everything. And my consultant came round to me and he just seemed really defeated at this point. And he was just like, I think that we can only do a biopsy. When I heard him say that, my heart broke. So I remember being very tearful and I literally grabbed his hands and I said, please, please take it out of me. I will focus. Just please do it for me. I need this. I don't want to go on treatments. I just please do this for me. And he just sort of walked away. I didn't know if he would listen or not, but time is a bit of a weird construct when you're on these type of drugs and in this type of situation. So when it came to looking at the clock and also seeing what they were throwing in this bin, it was just filled with stuff. Like it was all like bloody and stuff like that, but I could just see how high it was. And I also saw about 2.5 hours had passed. So then I asked him, I said, oh, I thought you said you can only do a biopsy. And he was like, oh, no, no, just focus for 10 more minutes and we can get it all. And at this point, I could really feel myself coming under. Like I was talking nonstop, doing these tests nonstop. And this is where I thought I was dying because like I could just see this like white light around my eyes where I was really trying to focus, but I just couldn't. I just said, please, just can I nap for like 5 minutes and then I can carry on again. And I think they knew at that point I I was done. Like I think I couldn't do anymore. So then they put me under. They did the rest through prior brain mapping that they did before through scans and stuff. And yeah, I ended up waking up, and he ended up telling my family. Well, they were very very scared because they originally said that the surgery would take about 10.5 hours plus, as if I had a stroke during sorry during the surgery. They said usually it would take about 6 7 hours. Mine was an 11.5 hour surgery. We got over 90% of the tumor. I would say I was only in the hospital for about 2 days afterwards. I didn't really like being in hospital. I wasn't really settled. I just didn't feel good at all. I remember just throwing up everywhere. Like I was so unwell, and that pain in my head was it. The best way to describe it, I just felt like I had just had my head smashed into a wall. It was just the worst feeling I've ever felt. About 2 weeks after my surgery date, I get a call from my consultant. And this is where he then told me my full diagnosis because they had to, they got to scan everything. He said, it's not grade 2, it's actually grade 3, just on the basis of like majority of it is grade 2, but there are areas where the mutation is becoming more aggressive. And he said this is why it's been very good to know and getting more of the tumor out because I could have tested it all, and I think if I did a biopsy, we never would have known about these grade 3, things within the cancer. But this is where they sort of had to tell me that news where I'm like, well, you are going to have treatment. I was supposed to have started with chemo, ended up on radio because I ended up having a complication with my surgery wound, which switched the treatment plans. So basically what happened there is where the temples are here is very soft tissue. And I suddenly I had this lump here filled with liquid. And, I kind of just thought, it's probably because of, where I was cut and it's just healing. But then it kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was almost like this water balloon on the side of my head. They had to do a part lumbar punch where they end up putting a needle in the back of your spine and they have to drain it that way because they can't just drain it from the head. They've got to do it and push it back through. Very, very painful procedure. I had to have two lumbar punctures done. I had to be sort of bedbound. Um, and because of all the swelling here that was slowly going down, they couldn't then give me chemotherapy. They, because I was already feeling unwell with that, so they put me on my um, radiotherapy plan, which I would have to go in from Monday to Friday every 6 weeks, or no, for 6 weeks. So it's quite constant. My hospital was about an hour away, and the only thing that I was a little bit nervous about is when they said to me is that it can cognitively affect you in the future. Um, and then there was just something about that where, I just got through this surgery of mine where I was told that I might need to walk again, talk again, all these different things, when actually I completely was this anomaly to the surgeon. Everything that he said would happen didn't happen. I was like the success story where I had the successful surgery. I could speak well, I could walk, everything I didn't need to relearn. Um, but to then be told that me having radiation could affect me cognitively, where my mind would be slower, where, you know, I would have very foggy moments and I didn't like the sound of that at all, but I just sort of had to run with it. And when I first started, they had to make a mask for my face. Thankfully, I'm not too claustrophobic because of all the MRI scans that I was having. I was very much used to it. But they made a mold of my face, and essentially what they do is that they clip you in to this like bed, and this is where they have that sort of thing that spins round that sort of can, you know, target the tumor. Um, it was quite a quick process. You're sort of only in the room for about 10, 15 minutes. You might experience, cognitive issues, brain, hair loss, burning if you've got more sensitive skin, where it can sort of blister, and they'll sort of give me the best and the worst kind of situations. Um, but you probably wouldn't see that until later on into the treatment plan. But yeah, I was going in and I felt completely fine. I was, again, still had that very much a focused mindset. It's like, hey, just get through this and then it'll be chemotherapy and then I'm done. Every 6 weeks, I would have a round of chemo. One was just an infusion. So one of the days I'd have an infusion and then they would send me home with 4 pills to take for 10 days. So almost like an 11-day round. And then the remaining parts of those 6 weeks is me just resting. And then they would give me the next one. And I did, well, they scheduled, 6 rounds of it. The first round, I was somewhat okay. I did feel nauseous in terms of like the type of symptoms that you could experience on that. It's like mild nausea. They said like hair thinning can happen. Um, but in terms of like the chemotherapy standards, it's like somewhat aggressive, but not aggressive to the point where you can't do anything. Like I could, get myself up. I could make myself some food. Like I still was, able, to do things, which was good. I didn't really go out anywhere just because one of the biggest things I was fearful of was getting sepsis. I finally finished my final cycle and I definitely felt probably for the first couple of days a bit more euphoric with it all. I was like, yay, I finished. End of a very, very horrible chapter in my life. But then there was also just a level of an anticlimax in a way, because it was just like, I don't know where to go from here. Like, I have to start again. I've got to carry this with me now. Like, no matter if I've got treatment or not, I've just gone through this hellish ordeal and I've got to learn how to be social again because I became almost like a bit of a recluse in a way where I was nervous around people, around large crowds, where I used to be this big city boy, which I was surrounded by crowds. I loved crowds. I loved speaking. I was like the voice of the party. This is how I knew that I was not the same person. I mean, like, I think before I was just wanting to live for my family, But then I was like, no, you've got to start living for yourself as well. And I'm so glad that I did. And I'm so glad that I pushed myself to my absolute limit. And, I sat down with my twin brother and we just sort of said, let's just move somewhere. Like somewhere we haven't even been in, like obviously more in the UK, but like let's just go somewhere, make a new start. I get scans every 3 months for this year, but they ended up having to put a tube through your femoral artery, which is like in your groin area, and on the top of your thigh, and they have to like push this like tube through to basically release this contrasting dye, which can sort of see, the little bits of like almost like map your brain a bit for my next surgery, which will be at the end of no, beginning of 2026, which is for my AVM, like the other mutation, like the blood vessels. Um, it's still quite a high risk surgery. I don't think I'm ready to go through surgeries and all of that again. So yeah, he sort of agreed and he wanted to let my brain settle and stuff as well. I really had my life mapped out, and having cancer has really thrown a spanner in the works with it all. And it really held me back, and there was a lot of frustration and a lot of anger. So I had sort of that done. Again, I'm still with my same therapist, and it's been nice sort of going through this journey with them. Because I know that when it first happened, I was just an angry, angry man. I was not like myself at all. And I thank them for being so patient with me and getting me through certain hurdles. Now I'm facing a whole nother bundle of different problems and issues that I'm finding hard. And, it's learning how to date again with having such a horrible thing that's happened, and learning how to work again and knowing your limits, and as well as knowing how to present yourself. I've been out of work for about a year and a half. Um, and yeah, just also just like self-acceptance as well. Like admire the scars that you have, because I remember when my hair was completely, because I buzzed my hair for a while and I just had this scar here and I hated the look of it. I I hid it every single day. I didn't want anyone to see it. I'd always have my cap over my head. And as my hair was coming through at the top, I tried to rework my wording on things and my thought process. And I just said to myself, you know what? Like, how would you feel and what would you think if you saw someone with that exact scar on the side of their head? And for me, I would look at it in ways like, okay, that person's got a story there. There is always that glimmer of hope, no matter whatever you're being told. Just hold on to that glimmer of hope and just let that be your end goal, no matter how long it takes. And there will be moments of doubt during all of that, but there is a really, really good end to the other side of it. And that's definitely something that I've experienced with my own journey, is that, I was willing to give up countless times, but having that good support system, my family and my friends really pushing me through to the end. Um, and the other thing as well, more medical based, is listen to your body. If something isn't feeling right, do not feel that you can't speak to your doctor and see if there's something that they can change for you to sort of make the process a little bit easier. Because I've often found, speaking to other cancer survivors, is that they just sort of get thrown onto anything, but it really affects their body. And naturally it would, but there are multiple different, drugs out there that can really help you, or different treatments. Same mentally as well. There's so many different ways of helping yourself, and not everything will work for you. But you just got to really, stand for yourself and push yourself in the right direction. Like, everyone knows their body and mind better than anybody. So yeah, be your own biggest advocate.